This One's Wife. Bulldozed Again. One of the problems that this one's wife has, and something that she fails to recognise because she's blinded to it by her narcissism, is that she is overexposed. Her overexposure is driven by her narcissism, since she needs to keep gathering the fuel and assert control over an audience. She further has this problem. It's almost like perpetual motion. Because she's untalented, because she has no charisma, because there are a lot of people that don't like her, she will do something, and it immediately attracts legitimate criticism, not hate, legitimate criticism across social media and mainstream media. Indeed, much of what she does is not so much a moral outrage with regard to her behaviour, but rather a simple assessment of what she's doing is useless. So she ends up being ridiculed. Owing to the type of narcissist that she is unable just to stay in a position of withdrawal and just get on with it. Instead, what she must do is engage in clapbacks, as they're described, whereby she arranges PR puff pieces and now pumps out even more material on Instagram in order to attempt to nullify the threat to control posed by the criticism. What then happens? The next thing that she puts out in response to the criticism gets criticised. Because it's seen as a clap back, it's also seen as petty and ridiculous. It's seen as grandiose and showing off. So it's criticised again. This then means that this one's wife, with her hypersensitivity to threats to control, must do what? Seek to nullify that threat to control. So she does something else, and on it goes. Thus, the more that she attempts to nullify the threats to control, the more that she creates material which results in further threats to control. But because her narcissism only operates in the moment and doesn't think ahead, she keeps doing this and repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. This means that she becomes very tedious very quickly, and it also means that she seeks prominence in publications, which means that she then becomes a target for people's legitimate criticism. If you're putting yourself out there because you want people to love you, which she does, you also have to understand that you will not be everybody's cup of tea, and either people will be disinterested in you or will actively dislike you. And accordingly, we have seen an example of this again, and it is an individual who is becoming something of a thorn in the side of this one's wife, namely ex-Vanity Fair editor Graydon Carter, who recently described this one's wife as somebody who was adrift from reality. Vanessa Cerner, writing in page 6, reports as follows. Former Vanity Fair editor Graydon Carter labelled this one's wife as the Undine Spragg of Monty Shitshow, after the latter married Prince Harry, quit the royal family, and moved to California. The Canadian journalist seemingly compared the Duchess of Sussex to Undine Spragg, a character in Edith Wharton's 1930 novel The Customs of the Country, while chatting with Interview magazine in a piece published on Thursday. I'm not familiar with this literary character. I don't know if you are. But apparently this character is a woman from the Midwest who attempts to join the high society of Fifth Avenue in New York City. Throughout the novel, the woman marries and separates from various men to climb the social ladder and surround herself with those who admire her, which not only sounds like the typical behaviour of certain narcissists, but also sounds like the behaviour of this one's wife, who we all know likes to portray herself as an empowered feminist, but actually as a woman who has only got to where she has got to as a consequence of her reliance upon men. First of all, her father, with regard to the payment of her fees and getting her acting gigs through his own contacts in the industry. Then Trevor Engelson, the first or second husband, dependent upon which version you believe, who also similarly obtained opportunities for her. Her reliance on getting foodie information from Corey Vitiello and accessing Toronto society. And then the biggest of them all, Prince Harry, who, were it not for him, she would still be a jobbing actress that only a handful of people had ever heard of. Despite her narcissism keep telling her that she has made her success on her own, the evidence points to the contrary. Spragg, who represents greed and ambition, feels little satisfaction in achieving her goals and often finds herself haunted by her failures, per the website. In a way, that would be applicable to a narcissist such as this one's wife. That while she looks smug, there is no genuine satisfaction because there's always the need to control somebody. There is always that nagging itch that never quite satisfactorily scratched. The chasm within which never gets filled. The fact that the failures amount to threats to her control and leave her feeling anxious, irritated, annoyed, furious. She can never rest on her laurels because there's always fuel to be gathered, people to be controlled, manipulations that need to be exacted. At the end of the book, Spragg gets everything she desires but still remains unsatisfied. It's unclear why Carter, age 75, referred to Markle as the Undine Spragg of Monty Shit Show, but the latter walked away from her career in Hollywood to wed Harry in 2018. It then just repeats a bit of their history, their move to Monty Shit Show, and then talks about some of her failures. Accordingly, an educated individual who has been around some time and has plenty of experience clearly doesn't like this one's wife and has compared her to Undine Spragg, an evident portrayal of a narcissist who is a social climber. This is an unflattering comparison for this one's wife. Should she be aware of Graydon Carter's comparison, and she probably will be because she scours the media, it will amount to a threat to her control. She will not sit there and think, he's got a point. She will simply think that he is an old, white male, and therefore he is a racist, misogynist hater. That is the default setting of her narcissism. That impenetrable film that does not allow her to accept criticism and learn from it, but instead must always reject it because she does not recognize what is said by those criticisms because her narcissism portrays her vision of herself as something entirely different, as I explained in detail only yesterday. Thus, this one's wife gets a bulldozing from Graydon Carter, public criticism, which is a threat to control, and it then gets reported on, which amplifies the threats to control, which is the perennial problem for this one's wife. What are the observations of those below the line? Do they identify for some sympathy for this one's wife with Graydon Carter's now increasing attacks? Or does the description that he puts forward resonate with them? JWRO comments, this one's wife never had a career in Hollywood. She tried for approximately 10 years and failed. She ended up in Canada in Suits. She was written out of the series. She had no prospects when she met Harry. Virginia Taylor states, I think it's very clear why he refers to this one's wife as Spragg, crystal clear. Ophelia then provides us with a comprehensive list of this one's wife's business and personal failures. See personal for why she's disliked by people with an intact moral compass. Business failures are described as such. Spotify podcast called A Grifter by Industry Leader, American Riviera Orchard, trademark debacle, Pearl, Netflix cancelled, 40 by 40, no follow-up and no success stories. Sussex Royal Brand, nixed by the late Queen. The Bench, not a bestseller. Heart of Invictus, Netflix failed. Live to Lead, Netflix failed. Polo, Netflix failed. With Love Markle, Netflix failed. Personal failures, familial strife, isolating her children from both sides of their extended families. Bullying allegations, called a bully by staff on both sides of the Atlantic. Isolated Harry from his support systems, friends and family. Oprah interview, lies about racism in the royal family while Prince Philip was so ill. Stole the late Queen's precious nickname. Taunted and mocked the late Queen with that horrible Netflix bow. Curtsy, you mean. Left the royal family, couldn't hand smiling and meeting people for charity, lost royal patronages, including HRH. Let the late Queen pass away thinking they thought the royal family was racist. It took Harry 2 years before he blamed it all on the British press. Endgame, leaked names of innocent royal family members she accused of the R word. Popularity polls, YouGov poll has her at 19%. Hollywood rejected her trying to belong to the A-list by inviting them to her wedding. Disaster tourism. And I'm sure there's plenty more that can be added, but Ophelia identifying many of the failures of this one's wife, demonstrating that more and more people see how useless she is. Rudy C. writes, and somewhere in a certain mortgaged mansion in Monteshitshire, the sound of dishes being smashed can be heard echoing through the foothills of the Santa Ynez Mountains again. Sally Struthers replies while Harold plays video games in the west wing of the dated Olive Garden. Jean Matty. It is an insult to Edith Wharton's 1913 novel for Meghan, who doesn't even come close. She has no class, character, etc. She's just a typical beyond phony, and everybody knows it. Jeff Meldrum writes, bad comparison. New York high society were not hereditary aristocracy and were known as robber barons. This one's wife wed the real thing but couldn't adapt. That family is odd. The press were looking for any means to make money off the royals, and she was a potential mint. I think what is going on here is our northern Alistair Cook is a royalist. He's not letting this one's wife even get a foothold now. HL, she's not made friends with her behaviour and conduct, but will never look in the mirror to see how she's the problem. Well, as you all know, she's incapable of seeing it because her narcissism won't let her see it. Sally Struthers writes, I forgot about what H.G. Tudor called the bench of stench. Ha 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 ha. Thank you, Sally, your glorious narrator, getting a name check there, as is entirely correct in page 6. Well, Graydon Carter bulldozes this one's wife. It's another day, it's another criticism. He'll just be dismissed as a hater, but as you've heard from the comments, so many people agree with what he has said. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.